In this particular audio clip, today we shall discuss about Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus, which was published in 1818. Mary Shelley was the daughter of the radical philosopher William Godwin, and her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, who was the famous feminist, the famous defender of women's rights. It was at the age of 16 when Mary Shelley eloped to Italy with the great romantic poet B.B. Shelley. Each encouraged the other's writing, and they got married in 1816 after the suicide of Shelley's wife. They had many children, but only one of them survived. As far as the novel Frankenstein is concerned, we should know about the political and social context of the novel. We should remember that Frankenstein was set in the 18th century, and 18th century means it was at the end of the Enlightenment and Romantic period. And it got published in the early 19th century, which was 1818. By the word Enlightenment, we mean emphasis on reason, analysis, and individualism. Enlightenment does not follow religious teachings. Instead of that, it puts much emphasis on reason, and that is why those thinkers of the thinkers of the time, they turned to scientific study, just like the protagonist of the novel, Victor Frankenstein. If you look at the social influence or political influences in Frankenstein, then we can say that the monster who is depicted in the novel serves as a critic or a criticism of society's view of outsiders. How society looks upon someone who appears to be alien, strange, and therefore considers that very person as an outsider. In fact, Mary Shelley uses the monster to display the corruption that was found within the social structure of England in the early 19th century. The monster represented a loose cannon, someone who does not belong to the accepted standards of society and therefore threatened the status quo of the political structure of that time. During this period, there was this huge growth of radical groups in society, and that is displayed. This growth of these radical groups in society was displayed through the monster's ability to destroy everything around him. Mary Shelley grew up in a home with parents who were very, very liberal, radically liberal in their political beliefs. Now, who do you call radical? Or what does being radical mean? What does it mean if we call someone that he or she is very radical? Actually, the term radical denotes someone who is inclined to bring about change. someone who is inclined to deconstruct the established standards of society, replace or transform the fundamental principles or the basic principles of a society or political system. Hence, if we say that Mary Shelley's parents were, very politically, they were very radical, they were very liberal, radically liberal, then we mean to say that they believed in bringing about changes in the political scenario of the time. They believed in bringing about transformation in the fundamental principles on which the society was based. However, if we look at Shelley's approach, we find that though she grew up in a very liberal family, she herself opted for a more conservative, and slightly pessimistic view of the world. Pessimistic view of the world where she does not put forth, or where she does not portray the world as a place which is full of hopes. Therefore, this political and social scenario of the time influenced the novel a lot. There is a little story behind the inception of this novel, Frankenstein. If we look at Mary Shelley's preface to the standard novel edition, which was published by Henry Colburn in 1831, along with his partner Richard Bentley. There, she confesses that she felt, as a woman, she felt a great need, the huge need to write this novel, because she wanted to prove to her husband that she was the best choice as wife and intellectual helpmate. And all this led her to write a closely supervised work, that is Frankenstein. Then, if we look at Mary Shelley, we shall find she always had this, urge to experiment with new forms of writing. And she was also given to radical thinking. And therefore, it compelled Mary Shelley to write her novel Frankenstein. Actually, it was a particular occasion when this projected ghost story contest, mooted by Shelley, her husband, Lord Byron, and his famous personal physician, William Polidori, at Byron's residence, happened. This occasion appeared when all these people like Shelley, Byron, and this personal physician, William Polidori, they decided to have a contest where each of them would write a ghost story. And the contest grew from their debates. If we want to know what led to this contest, it actually grew from the debates on the theories of human evolution. And since, though Mary Shelley only recalls the conversation about single cell parasites, and galvanism and anatomical reconstruction. Anatomical, what do you mean by the term anatomy? What does it mean? Anatomy means the branch of science. It refers to the branch of science which is concerned with the bodily structure of humans, animals, and other living organisms. And here, in this context was actually motivated by their discussion related to galvanism and anatomy, which was occurring between Byron and Shelley, that is Mary Shelley's husband. And since William Polidori was a physician, so it is quite natural that as a man of science, he had much to contribute to this context. So this is the reason this is the contest which finally led to the creation of this novel, Frankenstein. And all this information, became public 15 years after the publication of Frankenstein in 1818, as I mentioned. When Frankenstein was published, readers were not at all aware of this, contest related to ghost story writing, this discussion on galvanism, anatomy. It was only in the preface that was written by, it was only in Mary Shelley's preface, which got published in 1831, that all this information reaches the readers. And since P.B. Shelley was a romantic poet and he was very famous, as a woman, Mary Shelley also felt the need to prove herself as the best wife he could have ever chosen. And she also wanted to, prove herself as an intellectual soulmate of P.B. Shelley. And this finally led her to write the novel Frankenstein.